Right, hello everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry for the late start. I know most of us have had pretty much nightmare journeys to get here with the flooding and cars on fire and things like that. Just wanted to start by saying big thank you to the venue for hosting us. And also thank you very much to our speakers and to everybody who's made it here tonight to take part in this meeting. I'd like to ask everybody to respect this space, respect the speakers who have travelled and given time to be here, and to respect each other. We have three speakers tonight. We have Sian Griffiths, who's one of the first female London firefighters, now retired, and proud trade unionist, feminist and grandmother. We have Zalaha Ahmed, the chief executive of APNAHAP, and she has an MBE for services to women's rights and community cohesion in Rotherham. And we have Michelle Moore, who's a professor, an expert in inclusive education and disability studies, and co-editor of the groundbreaking book Transgender Children and Young People, Born in Your Own Body. I will introduce them properly before they speak. After they've spoken, we'll then move to contributions from the floor. We want to have a full and open discussion, and we're not going to allow that to be disrupted or derailed, as sometimes people have tried to do. Hopefully everybody here doesn't want to do that, want to take part in a useful discussion. The talks will be filmed, but not the questions and answers. And we'd ask that nobody else films the audience, because not everybody else has given permission to be filmed or photographed. Please all turn your mobile phones to silent. As mentioned, if you want to tweet, please use the hashtag WPUK, but don't feel obliged to tweet, however. Thank you also to everyone who for buying a ticket. There will be a collection later on if you would like to donate more money, but don't feel obliged. Just wanted to say a little bit about language, because in the debate about sex and gender, the language used has become such a controversial issue that many people, especially women, are actually afraid to even attempt to express their views or even ask questions, for fear that they will be shot down in flames for saying something wrong. One of the key aims of A Women's Place was to create the space for women to talk about these issues and to explore our concerns. It does aid communication when people taking part in a conversation can use language with agreed common meanings, but unfortunately within the debate about sex and gender there are a lot of hotly contested terms which reflect different positions in the debate. For example, even the words woman and man are contested now. You may have seen recent reports about people putting up stickers saying women don't have penises, and that being reported as apparently a hate crime. Now clearly the people who think it's a hate crime have a very different definition of women to the one that's in the dictionary. So yeah, we may have different ways of expressing ourselves. We have to try and make ourselves understood to each other. I'm not going to police the language that is used of the speakers or the audience, just because it's pretty much impossible to do so. Everyone's free to use the pronouns according to how they normally do it, according to a person's preferences, their outward expression of their sex, their outward expression or their sex. But just be aware that obviously others might misunderstand what you're saying if they're using it in a different sense. It does mean that the discussion may get confusing at times, but I don't think it's possible to impose a common language, so I think we all just have to bear with that. I just wanted to say a little bit about Women's Place UK. It was formed in response to the government announcement of the intention to amend the Gender Recognition Act to allow self-identification in order to, and basically in response to the climate of fear that existed and still exists to an extent. that had been created with women being threatened with violence just for trying to discuss these issues. Women's Place came together to try and create space for women to be able to talk about gender and the impact of self-identification of gender on women's sex-based rights and protections. There are differing views on many of the issues being discussed, but we feel it is important to focus on creating a space for those discussions to take place so that everyone can take a part in that and to learn more about the proposals and how they might affect women. You can read, I think there was one on each chair, the Women's Place leaflet with the demands, but I will just remind everyone of them now. The 5 demands are, firstly, respectful and evidence-based discussion about the impact of the proposed changes to the Gender Recognition Act to be allowed to take place and for women's voices to be heard. 2, the principle of women-only spaces to be upheld and, where necessary, extended. 3, a review of how the exemptions in the Equality Act, which allow for single-sex services or requirements that only a woman can apply for a job, such as in a domestic violence refuge, how they are being applied in practice. 4, for the government to consult with women's organisations on how self-declaration would impact on women-only services and spaces. And 5, for the government to consult on how self-identification will impact upon data gathering, such as crime, employment, pay and health statistics, and indeed monitoring of sex-based discrimination, such as the gender pay gap. So, in July 2018, that's this year, the government opened a public consultation on amending the Gender Recognition Act and the proposal to demedicalise the process of changing gender so that people can self-identify as the gender they choose without any need for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. But what exactly is gender, and what will be the impact of self-identification on women and on women's rights and legal protections? Potentially, this reform could spell the end to single-sex spaces and the provision of single-sex services, such as those provided by rape crisis centres and women's refuges, and indeed in many hospitals and health facilities. Lots of women have very serious concerns about the potential impact of these proposals. If implemented, this legal change would allow men who have had no surgery or medical treatment to self-identify as female. Many women have concerns that this will inadvertently make it much easier for ill-intentioned men to pretend to be trans women in order to access spaces currently reserved for women and girls. Only last month, a man with previous convictions for rape was actually convicted of sexually assaulting women inside a women's prison where he had been housed after claiming that he was a woman. For many of us, it's absolutely outrageous that women's safety is being put at risk in this way, and that we are being told to shut up and stop making a fuss, that this doesn't concern us. I'm sure many of you here will feel outraged by that as well. I'm going to start moving to the speakers now.